Sarah Sprinkle. Sarah's passion for community service is evident in her lengthy list of formal board membership and task forces, over 66 before losing count, at the local, state, and national level. Sarah has a talent for bringing people together to craft solutions and solve complex problems, which makes her a frequent choice for leadership positions. With over 30 years of visionary leadership in the community, Sarah Sprinkle brings an exceptional perspective to the Winter Park government. From her highly successful negotiating skills for Orange County Public Schools to her lifelong relationships with state and federal regulators. We're excited to have with us today Winter Park Commissioner Sarah Sprinkle.
Hi, thanks for joining us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I became a city commissioner and explain the role that STEAM or STEM and all of the math, science work together to create something like running a race and becoming a city commissioner. You know, in the state of Florida, we have about 18 million people, and 50% of those people live in cities, towns, or villages. There's 411 cities in the state of Florida. And one of those cities is the city of Winter Park. There's 67 counties, and so in our county of Orange County, we have a number of cities. One of those is the city of Winter Park. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I wanted to become a commissioner, what politics looks like, and how you work in that, and how I got elected. The major reason I wanted to become a city commissioner was we had a lot of infighting going on in our community, and one of the things it was all about was dogs. And so we had decided that we were going to require people to pay to come to a dog park in our city, and a lot of people got up in arms about that. In fact, the day I got elected, the first thing we did was we rescinded or did away with the fees that you had to pay to go to the dog park. So we were getting a lot of press that wasn't very positive, and I didn't like that. I love my community. I've lived here almost 40 years, lived in the same house 37 years. So the last thing I wanted to do was to open the paper and read about negative things going on in our community. I've always given back. I'm an employee of Orange County Public Schools for 35 years, and then I went to Disney. It was really a treat to hear Angel talk about Imagineers, because I opened 2 giant child development centers for Disney employees. And then I'm now in my 4th year at Florida Virtual School, where I really enjoy working because we're getting ready to get started with a really interesting elementary initiative. So I thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing and believe in giving back. I've always thought that for those that have gotten a lot, we need to give a lot back. So one of the reasons I wanted to run was to give back. We had another big initiative in our community that was creating a lot of angst, and that was commuter rail. As many of you know who live in Central Florida, there's commuter rail that's coming right through our town, and we wanted it to stop when it came through our town. It seemed kind of silly to have a rail line come through your town and not stop and let people get on and get off. So we had an issue there, and we supported that. In fact, right now we're getting ready to build a beautiful new stop for that train. And if you ride Amtrak, you'll be able to get on and get off there, and it's going to be a great building in our Central Park. Well, running for office is a science. It is all about mathematics. I'll tell you a little bit about our city, and you'll see how mathematics works. We have 28,000 residents, and about 18,000 of those residents are registered to vote. But only 6,500 of those residents are what you would call super voters. So one of the first things you do when you think about running for office is you look at the people who vote, because those are the people who are going to elect you. And those 6,500 super voters vote in all the elections. And so you get the names, you have to pay a fee and go to the elections office, and you look at the names of the people who are super voters. Now, I've lived in this community a long time. My husband moved to this community in 1959, and he went to Winter Park High School. My son went through Brookshire, Glen Ridge, and then Winter Park High School. So we've been here a long time, and we knew lots of people. So I just simply wrote down the names of everybody I knew. And then I wrote down the names of the streets they lived on. And I decided that if I knew that many people, maybe out of that 6,500 super voters, I'd be able to get them to come out and vote for me. That was my rationale when I started looking at the science and the math of winning an election. There's 5 precincts in our community, and when the numbers started coming in to see who had won the election, I knew after the first precinct came in that I had probably won because I had twice as many votes as my opponent. But by the time the second precinct came in, I knew for sure I had won because, again, I won 2-1. So when it was all said and done, I had decided that I needed about 3,500 votes to win. That doesn't sound like many out of 28,000 residents, does it? But when it comes to the number of people who are registered to vote, you're going to have about 6,500 to come out and vote. And of that, you need at least 50% plus 1 to win. So I was trying to get 3,500 votes. That was my goal, to get 3,500 votes. And I did pretty well. I got 3,400 votes, but my opponent only got 1,600 votes. So that's how I won. I won 2-1 on that because I guess I knew a lot more people than she did. But you also have to have a lot of friends who will help you. In fact, when it was time to run, and I called a lot of these people and I said, what do you think? Is there something I can do? And they said, sure, I'll help. So you call on a lot of your friends for help, and then they volunteer. And you do things when you're running for office you never thought you would do. I never thought I would stand on a street corner with a sign with my name on it and ask people to vote for me, but I did. I never thought I would go knock on a door where I didn't know the people that were inside and ask them to hear from me, and I did. And it was the most rewarding thing I did. When I started knocking on doors of strangers, and I only knocked on the doors of people who were registered to vote, by the way. So if you didn't get anybody knocking on your door, it's because you probably weren't registered to vote. When I would knock on that door and people would come to the door, I learned a lot that I probably had not seen or hadn't heard in many, many years. You know, I was a long time and am a long time educator and worked with many, many schools. So I knew our neighborhoods very well. But when an elderly person tells you they can't run their air conditioner because it costs too much money, that's something different that you won't see unless you're right there in their home. When somebody says, if I just had a way to get to the grocery store once a week, and then you say to yourself, I can help that person. So I'm one of those people who believes that's my job, that's why I was put on this earth, and I thoroughly enjoyed the process of knocking on doors and getting to know my neighbors. So yes, it's scientific, yes, it's strategic, and yes, it's specific. Every single Saturday morning, I decided to run in November. I announced in December. Our race was going to be March the 8th. So I kicked off my campaign the 1st of January. March the 8th, I was elected, and 6 days later, I was sworn in to be a commissioner. So it was pretty quick, but it was a lot of work. And all the time, it was very scientific, very strategic, and very specific. On a Saturday morning, I would meet with my friends, and I would get a list of the people in one neighborhood, and I would go and walk that neighborhood. One of my initial goals was to walk the entire city of Winter Park. And I won't tell you that I walked every single street, but I came close to it. Even today, if you tell me where you live, I probably know what your street looks like. So I did a great job of getting out to this community. I wouldn't give anything for that experience because I know where the sidewalks are not paved. I know where we have streets that are not paved. I know where we have septic tanks. It really prepared me well to go out and to do this job that I now have called commissioner. So I knew I needed those 3,500 votes. And I also knew we had about 2,000 people who were going to vote absentee. That means they were going to vote before the election. So I couldn't wait till the 1st of March. I had to do things early on. And that's what I did. The first thing I did is I called those people on that list of everybody I knew. And believe it or not, I had about 1,000 people on that list. And I called those people and I said, will you support me? So the very first thing I sent out was mailer that said, will you join Sarah's friends so that she can get elected to this role? And I put down, it was about 750 names of people that supported me. It was pretty hard to get them all on one piece of paper. And that was how I started, and I never stopped. The momentum built. Now, you have to raise money to run elections because you have to spend money to win. You have to do a lot of things, and part of what you do, that, by the way, are my grandchildren and one of my sons, and that's because I used everybody I could to help. I had to figure out how to get the people I knew to come out and vote. So some of the people I knew had gatherings for me. They would have a breakfast or a lunch, and people in their neighborhood would come, and then they would get to know me. And that was really what it took. It took me going out to neighborhoods. My in-laws had lived at the Mayflower, which was a retirement center, so I had spent a lot of time there. I knew where the towers were, and I knew people in all these different places. And that's what I did. I went to see the people that I knew. And writing down the names of all those people, I didn't just start with names of people this year. I went back to when my son played Little League, and he's now 29. I went back to when I was a room mother at Brookshire Elementary and in Boy Scout. I tried to find all those lists and looked at the names of those people because those are the people who knew that I might be able to get elected and do a good job for them. This is what our city website looks like. And if you're ever interested, you can go to your city website and see that we have a lot to learn, a lot to know. I didn't know as much a year ago as I know now about how cities work. You can't be in this job and not learn. So I'll tell you some of the things I've learned. I wanted to show you one more picture. I never thought I'd march in a parade. I never thought that would be something I would do. So we had a St. Patrick's Day parade right the Sunday before the election, and our whole thing was the real treasures of Winter Park were our children. And I had lots of children out because children are my basic reason for living. I think that's the difference in some people is that I am here because I believe in educating children. Well, now that I'm a commissioner, we usually meet twice a month. It's the second and fourth Monday of each month. We meet at 3:30 in the afternoon. I'm usually out of there by 7:30 or 8. Last week we went till 10 o'clock. That was not fun, but that's what happens. Every time that we're having a meeting, I get what's called an agenda packet. That packet's about 500 pages. It may be as many as 1,000 pages. So you have to like to read if you're going to do this job, because I have to read all of that and then prepare myself. The first thing I do is I call our city manager and I say, here are my questions from the city packet. Answer my questions so that I can make an informed decision. So I don't wait until Monday or Sunday. I do it the day I get it. I will tell you that one of the best things that I learned as an educator is that you don't wait. You don't put things off. You do them as soon as you get them. And then I'm prepared for the next week when we have our meetings. So preparation as a teacher, as a person who's provided workshops, as an administrator, I do adjunct teaching sometimes. Preparation is the key. If you ask me what I could give you as great advice, it would be preparation. Last Friday night, I got to cut a ribbon at a place called Dress for Success over at Winter Park Tech. And I planned my remarks for that. Even for this presentation today, I planned my remarks. When I got up this morning, I got out my scrapbook for when I ran for commission, just to remember some of the things that happened. Because even though it was just a year ago, I don't always remember all those things right up front. So if you like to prepare, this is a great thing that you can think about, because preparation is key to being successful in this role. And then communication. It's all about what people think they've heard, and it's all about communication. So you can't over-communicate. Now, we have some rules as elected officials. As an elected official, I'm nonpartisan. In this role, I'm not a Democrat or I'm not a Republican. These are nonpartisan races, so you don't have a party that helps to get you elected. You're elected by your friends primarily. And in fact, any kind of partisanship is definitely frowned upon. But you have these Florida sunshine laws that forbid you from doing certain things. I have one of my fellow commissioners swims at the same place that I swim. But I'm not supposed to talk to him because if people see me talking to him, they may think we're talking about city business, and you're forbidden to do that. So communication, one of the simple things that I did is every single person who gave me a dime or a dollar got a thank you note written by me. Now, that's not that big of a deal because you've probably been taught very well by your family to write thank you notes. But I will tell you, I had more people come up to me and say, thank you for that special note that you wrote to me, because you can't do it without them. I spent $55,000 to run for city commission. I raised $58,000. And I never really asked any one person for money. People just contributed. They know how expensive it is. I had money left over, and I gave that money to the Winter Park Day Nursery. I had almost $3,000 that Winter Park Day Nursery got as a result of that because I had that at the very end and didn't need it for anything. Just to send a mailer out to my community would cost about $8,000. So it's expensive to run for office. You have to want to do it, and you have to not mind working. And so that just gives you a little bit idea about what you have to do. And you have to be very careful. You have to be very specific and report everything. In fact, one lady who's a longtime friend of mine brought me $100 in cash, and she said, I want to contribute this to your campaign. So I put it in and gave it to my campaign treasurer, and he said, I can't take cash. That's not a rule we can follow. He said, you can take it by the rules, but we don't think it's a good idea. So I gave her $100 back because we didn't want to take cash. There's lots of rules that you have to follow very specifically. So why did I want to do this, and what am I doing now? Well, just about 2 meetings ago, we got added for the very first time to our Winter Park, the City of Winter Park's major plan education. And that may not sound like a big deal to you, but it was a big deal to me. It was a big deal to me because we had to kind of say to people, yes, education's important, and some people at the commission level said, well, we aren't responsible for that, so I don't think we should include it. And I said, I think we should include it because we spend a lot of time taking care of it. So we actually have included you students. We have included children. We're saying for the first time, education is what makes our community what it is. And that's really one of the reasons I ran. I wanted to run on the fact that we have to always look at children first. So the answer when you ask me for something is usually yes. It's yes because lots of people ask me for lots of things. And I believe one of my roles is to provide to you what you need. Now, I don't give you things you can't have, but there's something you want, I'll do my best. Now, here's an example. Just 2 weeks ago, we had a great brouhaha in our community about the tree canopy. They actually sometimes say that Winter Park is the city of trees. And it's a nice thing to say. I would prefer it to be the city where all children are created and treated equally. But at this point, it's the city of trees. And we had some overzealous tree trimmers, and that created a brouhaha. So at the commission table, I said, I wish we spend as much time on children as we do on trees. And sometimes I feel that way. I feel that way because I care greatly about the new generation to come, for what you all are going to have and what we're going to leave for you. And the tree canopy is very important, and we're going to make sure we don't get too zealous when it comes to cutting the tree canopy down.